Welcome to the Dave Ramsey Show.
Hello, Dave. How are you?
Better than I deserve. How are you?
I am good. Dave, I posted some things on your website in regard to insurance philosophies you put online. And having been an insurance broker for about 35 years, there are a few misstatements that are on there that I'd like to use the air as a chance to maybe either clarify with you or maybe get some clarity from you on. May I do that?
Sure.
Okay. Number one, you have said on your website that term insurance is the best and the only kind of product people should buy in all instances when they need life insurance. And what I can tell you is that we do not recommend whole life insurance across the boards. We recommend life insurance situationally. There's no two needs, no two situations that are pervasively similar. Okay? Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I'm hearing you. Yeah.
Okay. Number two, the cash value that you've talked about is
Wait a minute, did you want me to address that one first?
It's up to you.
Okay.
If you'd like to, I'll be happy to do it one at a time.
Well, you're an insurance agent, obviously, and I disagree when you say there are no two instances that are the same. There are basic principles of mathematics and basic principles of personal finance that are always the same. For instance, I would tell you there is never a time that you would use a credit card.
Mm-hmm.
You can't say that you can't convince me that there's certain times you should use a credit card. They suck. They're a bad product. They don't work. And I think the same thing's true of whole life.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, let's take it a little bit further. Number two, there seems to be some question about the cash value of a life insurance policy as being a bad investment. And I won't get into the issue of performance, but I think the big thing that you need to realize is this. The cash value is not there because insurance companies are creating a standard of return or investment that is deemed to be poor or is deemed to be immovable. The cash value
Then why would you do it?
Policy is there. It's a function of law. It involves.
So why would you put extra money into a policy to create cash value if the cash value has no standard of excellence at all on the rate of return?
Well, you didn't let me finish. Those policies historically get better as they get older. Okay, the cash value of a life insurance policy is a function of state law. It's a function of statutory reserves.
Sure.
And also, from an actuarial standpoint, it's used to keep premiums level indefinitely. Why do you think term insurance is so cheap? Because term insurance does not have or maintain a legal reserve affixed to it.
Well, sure it does. They have to have cash reserves to support. Otherwise, the state won't license the term insurance company. Now, it's a 20-year level term. 20-year level term insurance is about 1/5 or about 1/20th the cost, about 5% the cost of the same amount of whole life is.
You're right, but from an actuarial point of view, whole life is considered to be a product priced indefinitely that does not have.
Yeah, but it never stays in place indefinitely.
That depends upon the person, and that depends upon the situation.
All the research shows that they cash them out like crazy.
Not everybody.
Yeah,
I can tell.
yeah.
This I
the vast majority do. But let's just pretend you kept it for your whole life. Why the flip did you need it for your whole life?
How about some things called estate taxes? There are people who do, when they die, see their family incur substantial financial loss.
And so in order to cover estate taxes, I need to get ripped off for 60 years in a horrible financial product. That's your theory.
Well, let me just say this. If you talk about the difference of investment, why don't you talk about the difference in, for example, in attorney's fees? There are attorneys who charge $300 an hour versus $700 an hour. You don't tell somebody to invest the difference in legal fees to see if they come out ahead, do you?
Of course I would, if the actual if the actual legal advice was exactly the same.
Well,
if you die, you get paid with term insurance. Your beneficiary gets paid. Pretty simple formula. If you die with whole life insurance, your beneficiary gets paid only the face amount after you've paid 20 times more for the policy.
I can refute that very easily.
Well, you can't.
If a policy is arranged properly, a person can receive not just the face amount of the policy, but in addition, they can receive the value of the cash account.
No, they can't. Not unless not unless it's an AB universal, in which case you paid more for it to start with.
No, you do not. That is not true.
Are you talking about paid up additions?
Pardon me?
Are you talking about paid up additions?
No, I'm not talking about paid-up additions. There is did you ever hear of something called the fifth dividend option?
Sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
What is it?
Well, absolutely. The bottom line is, at the end of the day, the people don't get the cash value. You pay 20 times more, and the cash value is not added on. Now, I mean, you can look at every major whole life company that's out there, and you tell me they get their cash values. They don't get them. Russ, it's a piece of crap.
Listen, are you talking about the beneficiary?
Listen, here's the situation, dude. I can talk to you for the rest of my life, and I'm not going to talk you into not selling whole life.
I'm not even talking about whole life of term. I sell a lot of term, bundles of it.
But you still sell the other crap, too, and you're offended because I said it's crap.
Now, let me ask you another question. Yeah, by the way, for your information, just I'm not arguing with you, but the cash value, the amount of the value on top of the face of the policy can be paid to the beneficiary if the policy is written appropriately.
And none of them are written that way.
Well, I've written them that way for 35 years.
No, it just doesn't happen, dude.
You and I know
that is not how the industry is set up.
Well, believe me, it is. The other thing is, you said that, you talk about whole life as being such a horrible product. And again, maybe in your mind it is, but can I ask you this question? Mm-hmm. Why is that particular product that you think is so deplorable, bought by many publicly held companies and privately held companies to fund buyouts of corporate stock? And
there's a lot of buy-sell agreements that use whole life, and you know why? Because people like you sell that crap to them.
No,
that's exactly why they do it.
Do you know how much?
A simple partnership buy-sell agreement can be funded with term life insurance for 1/20th of the cost.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you know how many publicly held Fortune 500 companies use whole life and the millions of dollars the boards of directors authorize for that?
And it's really sad that they're all getting screwed at that level.
Well,
it really is, because it's garbage, Russ.
From very prestigious business schools, I think they know a little bit more than the layperson.
Well, they may or they may not, but the bottom line is that at the end of the day, dude, it is the payday lender of the middle class. It's a horrid product. When you pay 20 times more for the same amount of coverage to build up a cash value that you never receive, because when you die, they pay the face.
Hi, Dave.
Hi.
Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I think I believe in wealth, the equality of wealth being spread evenly amongst us all.
Why?
How we get there and the methods, I think, is what people are upset about. Mm-hmm. Lobbying groups can go in and lobby your congressman, big corporations, so that Exxon gets a tax refund rather than to pay taxes. Why we subsidize the oil industry when, subsidies are good for startup companies, but obviously we know that these companies are up and running.
We're talking about individual wealth here. Not Exxon's wealth. I think you think that everybody's wealth ought to be distributed equally.
Well, I think the method in which when people say,
go back to that. Answer the question. You think that? Do you think? You said earlier, I think wealth should be distributed equally.
Well, I think yes. Now again, how we get there is going to be a different.
Why should it be distributed equally?
Well, because. Well, see, that's what I'm saying. The method in which we get there, I think if
method comes out of the why. Why do you believe it should be distributed equally?
Because I think it makes for a better society. I think when you have too much of a spread, if you have the Robert Barons mm-hmm. and the Koch brothers in today's today's era,
So you think it makes a better society for everyone, regardless of the effort or talent that they have to make the same amount of money and keep the same amount of money?
It's not going to make society perfect, but it makes it more tolerable. Mm-hmm. It makes it where people aren't unruly because they feel, hey, they're getting the better of us.
Have you ever read Karl Marx?
Karl Marx?
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm not a communist, and
you are. By definition, you are. No, it's not name calling. You truly believe in the even distribution of wealth. It's not name calling. You believe in Marxism. It's exactly what you just outlined.
With all due respect, Dave, I think people want to go back to the way the system worked in the 40s, right after World War II. With the breadlines, the Roosevelt era. The new society, and I think people in the long run start seeing that Republicans and some Democrats, they're starting to tear down those opportunities that were once available to us.
What opportunity is not available to some? Wait a minute. If opportunities are available, what does it matter if everyone ends up with the same? Why would I care?
The opportunity has to be there. You can't let a company
now,
go
equal
out of the
opportunity
United States
I'm okay with, but equal distribution is where you and I would part company. But
right. But I mean,
if what opportunities are not available that were available in the 40s?
An opportunity that a high school graduate could go and work at a factory and carve out a good living, a nice living, just like my parents did or my grandparents did.
So you don't think a high school graduate can make it in today's society?
It's a little more tougher because the companies aren't there anymore. The factories aren't there, and when they are there, they want to just pay you. Just be thankful you get minimum wage. I mean, come on.
Have you ever visited any of the Nissan plants or any of the Nucor plants that I've visited? There are steel workers in cornfields in Kansas making $100,000 a year working in Nucor factories.
Okay, but I think that's the rare. I mean, not really. How many companies are there like that?
See,
as opposed to how many
I think there's a whole lot more of them than maybe you realize. That's my point. I think you're believing a party line or a talking point that you've not really backed up with actual research.
Hey, look, I came out of the church. I was a Christian. And I am a Christian. I feel.
What's that got to do with it?
And I voted Republican because that was the drum that was beat. Oh, the Republicans are the Christian
What's
party.
that got to do with what I just said?
Well, because now you're trying to label me that you think I'm a certain party. I'm not.
No, I didn't. I said you were uninformed. That's not a party. I said you believe a party line. Of a party line, a talking point, regardless of a political party, but you believe a talking point that there are no places for a high school graduate to go win in America today. And yet 80% of the current...
Not that there's none, but there aren't
80% of the current generation's millionaires are first-generation rich.
Well, and then that's the other thing. Henry Ford went bankrupt 17 times before he made it big.
17 times? Where did you get that information?
Look
17 times.
I don't, look it up online. You can
17
Google
times.
Information. Now, some of it is going to be true, and some of it's going to be
17 times.
17 times is what my understanding from what I've read.
Yeah. Okay.
And,
I don't think he would have been doing anything his entire life except going to bankruptcy court had he filed 17 times.
But that was what bankruptcy was for, and yourself, it was to get a fresh start so that the creditor still didn't have a stronghold on you.
So you think bankruptcy is a method that Ford used to build wealth?
What's that now?
So your implication is that bankruptcy is the method that Henry Ford used to build wealth?
No, it gave him the opportunity to start over. That's all I'm saying. And now
you can do that now.
You can't even file bankruptcy and try to start over again because if you make a certain amount of money, then you're going to hold you to payments.
Oh, so
that's
should.
the difference.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying is the loophole. I mean, the lobbyists for credit card companies, for big corp.
Yeah.
Have allowed the lobbyists to make these gone into these congressmen to allow these laws, and that's what people feel that the odds are stacked against us.
And so you back to your original statement, and to make sure I have this correct, you believe that wealth should be distributed equally, and you think the devil is in the details. The problem is where all the problems come up is how to do that.
Correct.
Because let me tell you one of the problems for you to consider on an intellectual level. Once it was distributed equally, talent, good looks, energy, and discipline is not distributed equally. And so once it's distributed equally, it won't remain equal.
Right.
That's the problem.
But at least give people the same opportunities, and that's where people I think are getting frustrated.
So that's where I think because we've been telling them they don't have the opportunity, and they started to believe it. Instead of saying this is the land of opportunity where you have the right to pursue happiness, and it's the greatest country the world has ever known. Instead, we're running around going, "Hey, look how rich that guy is, and you'll never get there because the game is fixed." And that's when we stole their opportunity because we stole their hope with this fatalism.
Right, and so we need to address those questions. That's all I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. So don't let Exxon, don't quit subsidizing the companies, quit subsidizing these people, that people, this organization, that organization.
I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with you. Let me give you an example, though, of what's interesting on that. The very jobs that you were wanting someone to have at a factory usually come if that factory ends up in your neighborhood. The reason it ends up in your neighborhood is if that municipality gives that company a tax break to come to your neighborhood and
that
build.
Shouldn't be, because Walmart is the biggest offender of that.
Here's the problem, though. If you don't give them the tax break to come to your neighborhood, those jobs aren't there, and they go to Mexico.
That's not true. That's not true.
Well, they're going to go to another neighborhood. Where do you think plants decide to build? They go where there's tax breaks.
Does that make it right? No, it doesn't make it right. Just because South Dakota gives all the credit card companies carte blanche to do whatever they want, and let's say Indiana won't, so everybody goes and runs to South Dakota. That's not right.
Yeah, those jobs aren't in Indiana. Those people that you were worried about having jobs and opportunity earlier, you took their opportunity away because you're worried about subsidizing that company. I'm not sure I agree with subsidizing these companies, but that's the paradox of it, is if you want a wonderful, big, fabulous company to come to your neighborhood's going to give them a tax break, and that's where those jobs come from. It's called economic development. And so you probably never heard the story, but I actually was the guy who had almost been on Oprah more than anybody. Oprah called like 5-6 times, their producers did, and would tease us like we could get on. I'd been on every other show back in the day. I'd been on 60 Minutes. I had been on Larry King. You remember when Larry King was on the air? And Sally Jesse Raphael. You remember her with the red glasses, all that. I had been on all these different shows, everything out there, except I couldn't get on Oprah, and they would call and tease us. So finally they call, and we get our Oprah appearance, and it was 3 different families on Oprah, and I was supposed to advise them in their trouble on Oprah. And the very first family, of course, I knew what I was getting into, and the families knew what they were getting into, sort of. And the very first couple, I'm sitting up there, I get in an argument with Oprah. Why would I do that? Because Oprah was wrong. That's what happened. So here was the deal. The wife had run up like $70,000 worth of debt, and her husband had no idea. And I had told the producers, I said, well, it's partially his fault because he's not involved in his wife's life enough. He's not loving his wife enough to even know what's going on in her life enough that she can run up $78,000. Unless she's just like a psychopath in her level of deception, this guy he doesn't know what's going on under his own roof. He's freaking clueless in his relationship. And so Oprah's reading the script, and she's like, and Dave, you say that it's partially his fault, and he owes her an apology. I don't think I agree with that. And I said, well, you would be wrong. He does owe her an apology because he hasn't been walking with his wife to the point she runs up $78,000 worth of debt, and he doesn't even know what the flip's going on under his own roof. And she's like, well, he delegated it to her. And I said, Oprah, this is not a business. You don't delegate stuff to your spouse and just dump it on them. And even if you delegated it in business, you would always inspect what you expect. You would never just walk away and hope it happened. You would know what's going on in business. And besides that, this is a marriage. It's not a joint venture. God did not say, and now you are a joint venture. He said, and now you are one. And these two are not one. They're not on the same page. And so, the poor lady's sitting there crying because she's so ashamed and overwhelmed. And the guy's angry because he's finding out he got $80,000 in debt that he didn't know he had. And, oh, man, it looked like a Jerry Springer episode or something. And, and I'm making him apologize to her for not being a good husband. Because if your wife can run up, your husband can run up $100,000 in debt, and you have no idea what's going on. You have chosen to not be involved in your own spouse's life, or they're a psychopathic liar. One of the two. But most of the time, it's you just dump it on them, and then you gripe because they didn't do it right after you dumped it on them and walked away and closed your eyes and went, well, I thought they were handling it. Well, yeah, you thought, but you didn't even care enough to get involved and know what was going on. And so Oprah's all upset with Dave because Oprah was wrong. Didn't work out well the rest of the show, but we got through it. So here's the rule of thumb then. We see couples who have a good marriage, have been married 10 years or 15 years or 20 years, sit down and start doing a basic budget together where every dollar has an assignment, every dollar has a mission, every dollar has a name before the month begins, on paper, on purpose. Every month before the month begins, a unique budget. It takes about 10 minutes once you've been doing it a while. But it takes about 3 months of doing it to get really on the same page and get a rhythm going. We see couples that agree on their spending before the month begins, on paper, on purpose, increase their level of communication tenfold, increase their level of cooperation tenfold, increase their empathy for each other, for the stress the other one's been carrying that they didn't even realize tenfold. They begin to agree on their goals, and their productivity with their money goes through the roof. You'll feel like you got a raise when you learn to do this together. On paper, on purpose, before the month begins, give every dollar a name. That's why we